fall of 82, Edward is looking after the ashram and then basically becomes part of the ashram. And then we're into 83, and I go back to India for a second tour. 84, I go back to India for a third tour.
Shortly, we lived in North Delta after India tour, and then we moved to West Van, and we found that house up there.
Huh.
But we also had an ashram in Kitsilano at the same time as West Vancouver.
This other town called West Vancouver, which is a very wealthy town, a separate city from Vancouver. And for some reason, all the subsequent ashrams that I lived in were all in this city of West Vancouver.
But Laurie liked the area. It was a bit lighter vibrationally.
I mean, you're basically on the edge of complete wilderness. You're on the side of a mountain. You know, there's some development, but mostly it's just trees and trees and trees. And I took a photograph outside one of the ashrams one day, and there was just rocks next to a bit of water coming by. And even though it was rock shaped, it looks a bit like Shimadaji's face.
Wow.
Yeah, it's amazing, I think. And I was going to say, Patrick, what you were mentioning about Canada in general, I found out a few years ago because I started wondering about the deity of Canada. You mentioned Vitala, but there's also Yashoda. So I asked around the world, old yogis, did Shimadaji ever mention it's the only deity we don't know who she is, like what aspect she is, the only deity. And then I found out I suspected that she was Mahasaraswati. And then somebody confirmed, yes, she showed as Mahasaraswati. And I thought of Canada as this massive nature, you know, and somehow culture and art. And I had to think of Richard all the time because he loved Canadian culture and, you know, CBC, I don't know, all these things. And I thought, yeah, somehow they showed that in Mahasaraswati is the power of the nature and the cool Canadian culture and all these things.
It's interesting what you bring about Sri Yashoda, because in 2008, again, Sri Mataji tells Yogi, go to Canada, immigrate to Canada. Canada is a nice country. So that's the country of Yashoda. We have a lot of immigrants from everywhere in the world.
And Shimadaji also mentioned that Toronto was the Dwarka in North America. I don't know if that's symbolic or if Sri Krishna was ever in Toronto. I mean, on the lake there, but it's like
I don't think it was. I don't think it was a metaphor. I think I mean, if you read the Krishna Avatara, I mean, and there's a lot of different versions of it, but the basic story is that it took you a couple of months to get from Vrindavan to Dwarka.
Yeah.
And what we identify as Dwarka in India is like 2 or 3 hours by boat off the coast of India, right? So from that point of view, it's from that point of view, and I also then think it sort of means people have to be a lot more careful. I mean, Dwarka got destroyed by its own people.
Yeah, true.
You see, and the SahajaYogi Dwarka.
So how it's worked out is of these original 4, the ones with or the original 5, I count Edward in, original 5, the Fantastic 5. You know, the group of us that really adhered and have the strongest sort of connection to Canada is Richard and Felicity after all these years. In 1991, we had this collective, we had Claire, we had Vivian, we had so many marvelous, wonderful people that had just sort of blossomed, and we're now coming to pujas to see Shimadaji all through the 80s and into the 90s. And it was like a strong collective, and Toronto was strong. And, you know, the centers were going through lots of turmoil, lots of things being worked out. There was so much to work out. I mean, Canada has an awful history of oppression and cruelty towards Indigenous peoples. And, you know, so many things to work out, to bring in the cultures of England and France and then work out all those karmas. So it was a real churning, and, you know, for a collective to learn how to completely trust Shimadaji, that, you know, we don't have to address every piece of negativity with an AK 15, that we can simply go out to the backyard, shoe beat it, buy lemons and chilies for the yogi in question, and be very, very sweet. And if they really are devoted to Shrimataji, that's my faith, that Shrimataji will bless them, that the negativity will get cleaned out, they'll improve. And even if they're still a bit rougher on the edges, they're part of the family. The first time I felt Shrimataji as being everything in the universe was after about 16 years in SahajaYoga. I was at Kenajahari, and I looked around at the land, and the tears just came, because finally it happened. The realization that everything is Shrimataji. And my earlier realization was when I came back from England in 1982, and I was really upset because I didn't understand Sahaja Yoga at all. It's like, why are these people so kind? Why are they so relentlessly kind? These French, these English, these Swiss, these Australians, they're all like, oh, it's just a boot. Don't worry about it. I mean, why were they so kind? Why were they so not judgmental? I'd been raised in a very judgmental kind of culture. And so I went for a walk after I'd been back for a few weeks in Vancouver. And I actually yelled out loud, "What is it?" And at that moment, the Parama Chaitanya put the answer into my head. And the answer was, it's love. And my nervous system had never felt love. And so being with Shrimataji, being at this space where there's just her and me, and then later understanding, but all the yogis are there too, because they're also with her. But having these experiences of complete nothing but me and Shrimataji, I had no vocabulary, no culture, no way of understanding that this is what love feels like. In which it's just an embrace. It's complete acceptance. It's like, welcome, we've been waiting for you. This is the seat that we reserved for you. No, not a mistake. I used to think I was somehow in error, like somebody else was meant to sit there. What am I doing there? And it took like decades and decades. And so Shrimataji knew that when she told me the first time I put my hands underneath her foot, was, for some people it takes a long time.